Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a session. We shall begin the session shortly. Good to see all of us. Please, let's use the chat option to just do a brief introduction. You can let us know your name, where you're joining us from, and perhaps just for just to appreciate who is in the session. Also, let us know your industry, the industry that you are in. That will be very helpful. So we can just have that on the chat. We're going to give a few minutes for the rest of the guys to jump on the call. That would be great. So my name is Kevin Nyakundi. I'll be taking you through the session today. I'll be your host for the evening. So let's see who's on the call. Please use a chat option. I know you cannot, because of webinar setting, you're not able to see who's on the call. Of course, I can see all of you. So let me just have use the chat option. Let's see your name, where you're joining us from, and also you can let us know your industry, where your profession. That will be helpful as well as we wait for the rest of the team to be on board. So good to have each one of us on the call. It's indeed a great pleasure and a great honor. And in the next couple of minutes, I'll be taking you through the session. So we have Andrew Quantisabrea. It's Andrew Quantisabrea from Entebbe, Uganda. Welcome, Andrew. Good to have you on the call. Ahmed, civil engineer from Somalia. Welcome, Ahmed. Currently working in Tanzania. Welcome to the session. Edward Ofula, working Edward Ofula from Kenya, working with Volunteer Spark Others, VSO. Claire Odinga, working project manager, AI industry. Good to have you, Claire. Welcome on board. So let's use this opportunity to just welcome, to welcome each one of us. Let's know where you're joining us from, your country. Those of us in Kenya, perhaps you can also mention your county, just to appreciate who's on the call. So we shall definitely begin in the next few minutes. James from Kigali, welcome, James. Jonas, civil engineer working in Uganda, welcome, Jonas. Christopher Kamau, project manager, telecommunication industry, welcome, Christopher. Nelson Wema, civil engineer, graduate intern, HP program, welcome. Good to have each one of you. Leah, welcome, Leah from Nairobi. Emma, Emmanuel Nico from Uganda, welcome, Emmanuel. Good to have you on the call. Alias Rasasi from South Sudan, welcome, Rasasi. Good to have you on the call. So the rest of us, please, let's just introduce ourselves. We will begin in the next 5 minutes, giving about an extra 5 minutes for the rest of the team to join on the call. And we'll definitely be looking forward to what the course entails, Most of you could be familiar, that could be aware, perhaps you've had it, perhaps you've seen it. Those of you who've been especially been keen on your PMP, you could be keen, and if you've been keen, you could be aware that we now have a new PMP exam. I'll be talking about that later on. But also, key is really for us to appreciate the value of project and value of project management in this economy, in our global economy, and what we call the project economy. We shall be talking about all those interesting stuff. Also, you really want to appreciate what is the PMP dividend? How do you position yourself in this space? Many of us we find that we probably will find that we might not be failing so much in our projects because of our lack of technical expertise or in your area of specialization, but to a large extent because there is much more that we need to appreciate in the space of project management. We come into this space as by accident sometimes. Most definitely, I found myself in project management by accident and discovered that most of my projects were failing before going to enhance my knowledge in project management. And of course, today I always tell people I'm a product of the product, and hopefully the next couple of minutes we get to appreciate the very content of all this. So welcome our friend from Tanzania, Adriano. Welcome, Ali, and renewable energy professional. Christopher from Uganda, welcome as well, Christopher. So we keep on with the introduction. We're giving 3 more minutes, and of course, exactly 10 past, we shall begin the content of the day, so that we don't punish those who come early. Sometimes you wait for those who are joining late. You end up punishing those who join early. So no, we don't want to do that. The session is definitely facilitated by Pickpoint Consulting Group. I'll be talking about that later on. And just letting you know what we do at Pickpoint. So welcome all of us. We will be beginning the session in the next 2 minutes. Willis, Witty, welcome, Willis, and good to have each one of you from wherever, all over the world that you're joining us. So it's now 10 minutes past the hour, so we're definitely going to jump straight into the core content of the day. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We will have the session. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Engineer Kevin Nyakundi. I'll be your host and your facilitator for this evening of this looking into the PMP certification. I'm an engineer by profession, but a lot of passion for project management because that is basically what I do on a day-to-day basis. This evening, I'll be taking you through a number of key things around project management. But of course, I know a number of you are on the call as well because you're keen on getting a project management uh, professional certification. I'll be taking you through that as well. Before we begin, perhaps one or two housekeeping rules. The session is being recorded. You will have access to the recording. You will get access to the session presentation. The presentation will be shared on your email, but also along the way, we have a PMP Training Hub WhatsApp group. So, and my colleague Brenda is going to be to post that on the chat. If you join that, Brenda can join that. If you join that, then of course you get this faster. So we will upload the slide deck there. We're going to upload the recording there as well quickly. But otherwise, the rest of us, if you're not on the WhatsApp group, you'll get the materials tomorrow. It's usually automated text after 24 hours. You can use the chat option. You know that because of the high numbers of people, we in our webinar setting, and that means you'll not be able to see, of course, your friend who's on the call. So and this is to make this meeting a little bit orderly. When you have so many people, you don't know who will unmute where, then that interrupts the conversation we're going to be having this evening. I do appreciate that a number of you might have questions along the way. Do not hesitate to have your questions on the chat. And I'm going to, Brenda is going to be answering a number of them that she can be able to answer. Otherwise, at the tail end, I'll be able to respond to most of them, which could not have been responded to. But also, should you have any question that you feel might not have been answered to at the tail end, you can always put your hand up and we will allow you to speak up. I think those are the key announcements that you need to be aware of. Without further ado, then we want to just jump straight into the core content of the evening. And I want to welcome each one of you into the PMP Masterclass session. And this is going to be an introduction into the project management professional certification. And we're going to have a strategic overview of the world's leading project management credential. Now, when you talk about the PMP, this is the global standard when it comes to project management. Indeed, we always say that PMP is a gold standard in project and project management. And a number of you could be familiar with that. Yours truly, I'll be presenting this to you. I'm an engineer by profession, over 15 years managing infrastructure projects, both in public and private sector. I'm a PMP accredited trainer, and those of you who are in the space of contract and construction project management, you perhaps will be very familiar with FIDI contracts, which is an area that I have a lot of passion. And of course, a number of you have perhaps been in one or two of my classes, and gladly so. So welcome in this. So I have a PMP, PMI, senior construction professional, and I'm also a CPK in those spectrum. So the learning objectives for this evening is number one, we want to understand the project economy. I want us to appreciate why project management is now a C-suite strategic capability, driving value across every industry. One of the things I'll be talking about later on is this idea of value. That project management as we know it today, there's much more emphasis around this idea of value delivery. That projects are nothing other than vehicles for value. And we see what exactly is this idea, we call it the project economy. There's an article from the Harvard Business Review that I love a lot. It's titled, "The Project Economy Has Arrived." I would highly encourage you to have a look at that document. That could be of help. Okay, somebody asks, can we increase the font size? Let me see. Let me just stop this share. I'm going to try something different. Might not be able to increase the font size at this moment, definitely, because of the slide deck. So perhaps for your your future friends. However, let me try to see if this makes it any better. Slideshow from... I'm not sure if that helps. I hope that helps. I think it was Simon. Simon, does that help? You can just type on the chat. I hope it's much better. Okay, thank you. I'm glad that it's clear. So sorry for that. And it's good. I always like to have that interaction so that I get to know when something is happening. So you want to understand the strategic role of project management and recognizing how, as a project manager, you are meant to act as a bridge between the strategy of the organization and the execution part of it. So your role as a project manager, as a project professional, is to translate strategy into defined scope, schedule, budget, and stakeholder outcomes. So of course, understand what what the PMP is all about. I want you to appreciate the PMP credentials. And I want us to appreciate the PMP from the perspective of the first two discussions that we'll have built on. That is the project economy and the strategic value or the strategic role of the PM. And of course, master the three domains. This is now, we'll be looking a little bit more into the PMP exam, and I'll be talking about the new PMP exam that PMI has for us, and what is different and how does that then help you in becoming more strategic in your career and in your organization? Understand the exam format. So just to really look at the exam format, and of course, evaluate your investment. What then does that entail? So the agenda is packed for the evening. A moment of reflection, the PM imperative, the strategic role of PM, a vehicle for value, all about the PMP, the domains, and all the key things. So it's going to be an evening worth listening to. Please, as I mentioned earlier, if you have any question, put it on the chat. I'll be checking through the chat just to appreciate if there's anything that I can be able to answer on the go. Otherwise, most of the questions I shall answer them at the tail end. Let's take a small moment of few minutes and just reflect on a couple of questions. And you don't have to answer this really. I just want you to think through it. And this is really to set the pace for the evening. Number one, how many of us have worked on a project that technically finished, but we felt like it was a failed project? Sometimes you finish a project, it was on scope and time, but then you're looking back and wondering, is this project really giving us value for what we wanted? You've spent time, you've spent money, yes, and everything is okay. The project management aspect is a success, but the project itself is not a success. For a very long time, we have looked at project success on a very different, we focus more on project management success as opposed to the project success. And we shall be looking at that. You don't have to answer the questions, but just think through them. How many of us are currently managing projects based more on experience and instinct than a structured framework? And I'm sure perhaps a number of us in this session could be. I talked about the project economy, rather mentioned there. And I'm certain that in most organizations today, most of us find ourselves in executing projects. You're a very good software programmer. We put you into an IT project. You're a very good engineer. We give you into an engineering project. Not because you have done anything, in terms of knowledge and all. It's just because you're good in your technical space. And we got to see, shortly why that sometimes is a recipe for failure. Where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 3 years? Still executing tasks or leading strategic initiatives? Perhaps most of us will be desiring to be at the strategic level, strategic initiatives, and getting to see, even when you're handling projects, beyond just the execution of the tasks, everyday tasks, getting the connection between the strategy and the links. And of course, if you had absolute clarity about the PMP journey, what exactly will stop you from taking the next step? So perhaps that's a question we shall answer at the tail end. Let's I think this should be a short clip here. Sorry. I'm trying to find. Okay, there's uh there's okay, so there was a short.
I got my PMP certification in 2022. That has opened a lot of opportunities for me.
When a company sees that PMP badge on your CV, it shows that you've got true dedication to the profession of being a project manager. It also shows to the potential employer that you've got the necessary hours as a project manager under your belt as well.
PMP helped me to get bigger projects because I had more confidence and the courage to take bigger projects.
I received my PMP certification 6 years ago, and it helped me to get the job that I actually have right now. I'm now an international project manager for a big change project, and you need methods and skills for that. And without the toolbox that I received through the certification, I wouldn't have been able to tackle that.
In the organization where I worked, it was not so common to have a PMP, so it really gave me more credibility in my role as a project manager. It had a huge impact, expanding my knowledge in so many other areas that initially I never had worked on before, giving me confidence.
So the beauty about PMP is that it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter which part of the world that you are in. Definitely, all of us can be PMPs. So the project management imperative, why structured project leadership is now a C-suite priority. One of the key things that I appreciate, and we perhaps all of us have seen, is that the desire and the need for having more uh, 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 having a higher level of understanding in project management is now a core competency in organizations, in all organizations. That project management is now a strategic imperative. It's a core competence in organizations. Most projects today are uncertain, complex, non-linear, and changing. That we have today, when you're executing any project, we have multiple stakeholders who are much more aware. How many times have you seen a project which begins, the government wants to do a project, could be a railway project, could be a dam project, could be a road project, and people go to court and they stop the process and they say, you know what, we've not been compensated, you know what, we do not understand how our safety of this nuclear power plant is going to be taken care of as you execute it. We have much more aware stakeholders. Complexity in terms of the number of risks. Today, more than ever, organizations are called upon to be more agile. There's more need for agility. What you thought was a perfectly worked out plan today, tomorrow is not the case. You find that you have to change completely what you thought would work. So meeting the triple constraints of time, budget, and scope is insufficient to guarantee business success. Again, this is what I was saying earlier, that for the longest, the success of any project was really pegged around the triple constraint. And this triple constraint, you guys could be aware of this. So we talk about scope, time, and cost. Then, of course, you could input there, have quality in there. But this is no longer a sufficient matrix, a way of checking that we actually successful. The triple constraint made sure that we were successful in project management, but not necessarily having a successful project. So those are two different things. And shortly, I will explain the difference. So that is really the bare minimum. That is really the bare minimum, meeting the triple constraint. So by the way, we're not saying that it's useless. we still, as project professionals, we still have to make sure that our projects are within, we're doing executing the scope of within time, cost, and of course, meeting the scope as required by the client. But what we're saying that meeting this is no longer sufficient to guarantee business success. What then guarantees business success? We shall see that shortly. So project management is becoming more of a strategic competence, and because of a number of reasons. Number one is that we have increasingly disrupted markets, economic and demographic shifts, regulatory landscapes are changing, a growing digital economy, changing customer expectations, and this is a big one. Today, whenever you're doing a project, and one of the key things we shall talk about later on is one of the tasks within the three domains that I will be taking you through, is this idea of stakeholder engagement. That projects now have multiple stakeholders. The question then is, how do you make sure that we are managing these stakeholders' expectations? Because remember, in any particular project, you have different stakeholders, and all these stakeholders have different expectations. They have different interests in the project. And then your role then as a project manager is making sure that we're managing these expectations, that we are setting up the project for success by making sure that everybody of all these stakeholders, we're all pulling on the same direction. And if we're not, then there's a problem. We have to make sure that we go back and we don't leave anybody behind, because that stakeholder that you leave behind could be the greatest impediment to the success of your project. So the board level strategy pressures, of course, at the board level, everybody is now asking, wait a minute, we are pumping in so much money into projects. How are we certain that we're actually getting the results? How are we certain that we're actually getting the value that we're seeing? So there's much more move towards this idea of value and value delivery. We shall talk about that. Rapidly transforming organizations, the cost structure redesign. Now, for every cost, for every shilling we're putting in, we want to ask ourselves, wait a minute, how much value are we getting for every dollar we're putting into the project? Because again, remember, we do not execute projects because we have infinite resources. Organizations have very finite resources. And these finite resources must be used to deliver the value of the project. Organizational transformation, technological investment waves, and of course, operational model innovations. All these things are things that which are changing. Of course, creating sustainable value. Now we're living in an era where this idea of sustainability is coming out big. The ability to execute with speed. So right now, you want to have a project. Yes, the project is going to take 3 years. But are we going to wait until 3 years before we can get the value of the project? Is there a way that we can get value sooner? Is there a way, if we have a 3-year project, can we have it phased out so that we can begin enjoying some of the benefits? If it's a hospital, we're doing a construction, perhaps can we start with the outpatient wing of it, so we can start using it before you can, even as we continue working on the inpatient aspect of it. Is there a possibility of what value can we derive from the project, even as the entire aspect of the project is being carried out? So that there's need for speed. Stakeholders today want to enjoy their money. They want to have a shorter payback period as opposed to having a very long payback period. Identifying new opportunities. Embedded ESG into delivery. Now, this is a big deal right now. Sustainability is one of the key aspects when you're talking about project and project delivery, increased ROI and net margins. But let's talk a little bit about the history of project management. And then that would perhaps help us now talking about the project economy and why that is very key. So project management, as we know it today, can be traced back to the 1960s, and largely within the aerospace and construction industry. That is when PM as a discipline is born. Remember the 1960s, this is not so long after the World War II, and economies are still building. And the construction industry the aerospace space, and the hard infrastructure, as you call them. So, buildings, roads, railway, that is really what was, driving this idea of project management. So much so that for the longest, people assumed that people who actually did project management were engineers and architects and quantity surveyors, people who are in the built environment space, so to say, because that's that's really where project management was born. But that over time has changed. And now all industries have discovered, and especially the 1990s and 2000s, when, remember that's the era for, the dot-com era and the era where, we're getting into the technology space so much, so rapidly, the computers becoming more affordable, and so much software engineering becoming a big deal at that time. And they started asking the software engineers and guys in the IT space began to ask themselves, wait a minute, for the longest, we have relied on project management of the 1990s and 1970s, which was largely what we call the plan-driven, plan-driven, or what we call the waterfall or the predictive approach, was a case where you know that you're doing your feasibility. After you do your feasibility, you do your design. After you do your design, you do your execution or construction. After you do your construction, you do your testing. Then, of course, you execute, or sorry, you commission. And in case, of course, anything happened here, you could go back. But it was so plan driven. You had to finish the previous tasks for you to move to the next. It was plan driven. So we call this a plan driven approach to project management. But I mean, think about your software, think about your website, think about your mobile applications. This approach was found to be too rigid in the sense that when you found somebody, when you found a bug at the tail end, it became too costly to start going back to the initial state. They say, hey, wait a minute. Can we have smaller iterations? Can we divide this work into smaller chunks of work? So now we talk about agile project management. And then now we have smaller iterations, what we call backlogs, and then you're able to execute the project in smaller iterations. This call for agility, this call for agility. So we call now some of you could have had this concept of agile project management. It's a big deal right now. We all are using agile. Actually, the latest research around the space of project management shows that most projects, almost all projects, are now hybrid projects. That means we have facets of them we have an aspect of the project which is agile, then we also have an aspect which is predictive. So even the traditional construction projects are now more, the design phase of it tends to be more iterative. Think about when you go to your architect and your architect gives you, they don't give you your architectural drawings, then you agree. You have a number of iterations before you will say, okay, this you settle for this. So agile as we know it, these ideas that began in the 1990s. 2001, to be very precise, we had what we call the Agile Manifesto. And of course, we shall talk about this in future classes. And the Agile Manifesto really is what bore the Agile project management, as we call it today. It was developed by 17 software engineers, and they came up with the Agile Manifesto in 2001. And this fundamentally changed how projects were being delivered, especially the Agile projects were being delivered. And now, those of you in the IT space and perhaps in the software space, I know this is something that you will be very familiar with, agile project management. We shall talk about that. And now, those of us in the so-called hard infrastructure, we now borrow so much from this space to be able to be more to increase our agility, which is a key aspect. And we'll talk about agility a little bit more. Now, 2020 and above, project management is now about being more strategic. Value realization, AI, the project economy, sustainability. Now, you as a project professional, your role now is more being a strategic business leader. Is trying to see this strategy, this beautiful strategy that we've crafted, how can we realize it? We realize the project we realize the strategy through projects. So as we execute projects, as project professionals, it's always important to ask ourselves, wait a minute, what is the value of this project? In the grand scheme of things, in the entire organization, where does this project fit? Where does this project fit? And that is really what this is the era that we are in, and this is ideally what I'll be focusing much more on, because our role is now more being a strategic project manager and getting to understand projects from a strategic level and then being able to execute them at that particular level. As a project leader, and for you to be able to meet that strategic mindset, you need to have a key responsibilities that will be bestowed upon you. Part of the four core responsibilities will define your modern project management, project manager or project professional's mandate is: number one is strategic alignment. Strategic alignment. This is ensuring that every project maps to the organizational strategy, converting vision into a defined scope, schedule, budget, and stakeholder outcomes. So you have to understand, because you have the vision, you have the mission of the organization, then in between there, of course, how do we realize this? We have the strategy, but how do we realize the strategy? Through projects, So your responsibility is try to make sure that every project you're doing is tying into the vision, into the strategy of the organization. Risk, quality, and stakeholder management, very big. So being able to identify, mitigate, monitor risks, this is one area that I always love. And most of us as project professionals, as people who execute projects, we ignore risks so much, but to our detriment, Some of us who are in projects, for example, in IT, in construction projects, in projects that deal with communities, you cannot execute any project without thinking around risks. And it turns out that a number of us, as we execute our projects, we perhaps are going to engage other third parties, a vendor, a contractor, a service provider. And when we engage these people, what we engage them with, what form of document do we engage these people with? A contract. And contracts, ladies and gentlemen, they apportion two things. They apportion risks and the scope of work. You're telling the vendor, this is a scope of work I want you to do, but it comes with risks. So these are risks that I want you to bear. These are the risks I want you to shoulder. These are the risks I'm transferring them to you through the contract. But perhaps we're all familiar with the risk-reward theory. And the risk-reward theory basically is that for every risk I take up, I'm going to charge you. I'm going to charge a premium. So if I'm taking up a risk, I have to charge a premium. That's why when we take a risk to the insurance, we pay premiums, right? Because the insurance company is not just there to do charity, not at all. The same thing happens in projects. So the point I'm trying to emphasize here is that as project professionals, we need to understand risks. We have to identify risks. We have to come up with risk registers. We have to know which risks, who is handling what. And this is important as well, because you see, as a project professional, you could be a project professional. In projects, you could be working for the client, or you could be working from the vendor side. So whichever side that you are in, you need to understand which risks are we taking up, what are they, what is the compensation we have for those risks. Safeguard value through quality control, stakeholder expectation management. This is very key. Of course, again, stakeholders reappearing there. And talk about stakeholders quite a lot in this, because projects are done for stakeholders, by stakeholders. Huh? So we must appreciate. So your role as a project leader is being able to understand all this. I always say this. As a project leader, you must have a bird's eye view. We need to have the helicopter view of the entire project from the value chain of the project, going into the nitty-gritties of the project itself. That is how we execute projects. That is how you become a strategic project leader. Value and benefits realization. Ladies and gentlemen, projects are nothing other than vehicles for value. Projects are nothing other than vehicles for value. If you don't get anything from this session this evening, please go home with that one. That your project is a vehicle for value. It's a vehicle for value. That when you're doing a road, people are not so much interested in you doing the road. Is the value that they will get when the road is done. And that is why when we talk about later on, we shall be talking about agile project management. And in agile, we embrace this idea of you need to appreciate this concept of waste. We want to minimize waste. And we talk about the 7 wastes of lean, because agile borrows a couple of lean concepts. One of the wastes of lean is work in progress, and we shall try to endeavor to explain why work in progress is such a waste, and how we can then plan even our work as project professionals so that we're not having so many tasks open and none of the tasks is complete. None of the tasks complete. I always make fun of government, and we all see, I noted we're from different, we've guys from Uganda, Rwanda, Somalia, Kenya, definitely, and I think I saw a couple of other guys from Zambia, Namibia. And all these African governments, many times, one of the things I always see as a big waste is you find, for example, you're starting 20 roads at the same time. All of them are abandoned midway, and you always wonder, couldn't we just focus on 5, finish them, then perhaps go to the next waste? So value and benefits relation. You have to champion business cases, track the realized benefits, not just the output delivered, but the outcomes achieved. As a project professional, as a strategic project professional, we want to emphasize this idea of benefits realization. Later on in the course, we shall talk about the benefits realization plan and much more. But what is this? Just to give you a highlight of what we're talking about. Many times, for the longest, we focused on project management success, that we have delivered a successful output, a successful product, a successful service. Benefits realization is beyond the commissioning, beyond the handing over of the asset, beyond the handing over of the product. How do we realize the benefits that we justified in the business case? How do we realize the benefits that we justified in the business case? A couple of years ago, I remember I was working for one of the company I was working for at that time. I was being engaged in projects for the longest. So I did a business case to justify a particular project, and I was presenting to the board and for the business case, and well, it was really how you guys you do your business cases, you try to justify X or Z the project, how we're going to get return on investment, and quite good. I did a good presentation, I so believe, and because they mentioned the same. But then I remember the CEO of the organization asking me, Kevin, you've done an amazing job, mentioning, where you're taking us and how this. But one of the things that I failed to see in your presentation is how we are going to realize this value that you have articulated so well. And that was a big one, a big eye opener for me, that we want to realize. So benefits realization brings this mentality that we have to look at the life cycle costing of the project. We have to look at the maintainability of the project. So this is one of the things I always see. I mean, I've been in projects for the longest. One of the things that sometimes I've found with, especially now the team, that and I hope we understand the difference between projects and maintenance, because they're different things. Many times when we finish a project as the project team, we'll hand it over to the team that will be doing maintenance to realize the value. And many of us in projects, unfortunately, we focus so much on just doing the project, not looking beyond the project, not looking beyond the handing over the project, not looking at, wait a minute, how will this asset of ours be maintained? How will this person? I want you to, every time you're doing any project onwards, benefit realization is all about that. Looking beyond the handing over, looking beyond and saying, wait a minute, when we execute this project, once this is done, the other party, how will they actually maintain this? Is this maintainable? Is this something that we can do now to make the project more sustainable? That is now the aspect we're talking there of value realization. And of course, that is a big deal now as for project professionals of today and of course the future. Multi-stakeholder leadership. You, as a project leader, your role is to be a good leader. Throughout this course, one of the things that we shall talk about is leadership, emotional intelligence, the ability to lead teams, the ability to lead stakeholders, the ability to make sure that everybody is having the same vision that you're having. You have to mobilize, facilitate coordination across owners, financiers, regulators, communities, and basically orchestrate the complex interface dynamics. Projects, ladies and gentlemen, have so many moving parts. Projects have so many moving parts. Your role as a project manager is not just to lead the tasks, sorry, to manage the tasks, is to lead the people who are in these interfaces. The owner, the financials, if they're different, sometimes they are, the regulators, the communities, all these cases, they potentially will affect the success of your project or otherwise. So leadership is going to be a key thing. And as a project leader, as a strategic project manager, project professional, you need to understand that and be able to master it and really take it seriously. The four dimensions that make the PM role indispensable at the execution table today is, number one, is as a project professional, you're expected to bridge, you're the bridge between the strategic vision and the execution. I think I've tried to belabor to talk a little bit more of this. And project managers translate abstract ideas, intents into economic targets, sustainability goals, into defined scope, schedule, budget, stakeholder engagement. Protecting value through quality and risks. Again, I've already mentioned this. Projects face cost overruns, delays, stakeholder conflict, and the PM identifies, mitigates, and monitors these risks. Going forward, if you're executing projects, I want you to try do one thing. Try come up with what we call a risk register. Identify the risks. I want you to ask yourself, how can we respond to these risks when they do occur? Which risks have we transferred either to other parties through the contract and the likes? But in contracts, I'm not talking about contract management here, but in contracts now, when we transfer the risk to contracts, because you project managers do that, and when we talk about contracts, I always like to say that we want to transfer the risks to the party that can best handle that risk. Because failure to do so, you make your project so risky. But again, perhaps something we shall look at when talk about risk management. Enable multiple stakeholder coordination. I've tried to talk a little bit about this, but as a project leader, you need to be able to do this. You need to make sure that all these moving parts, you're moving together with them. They're carrying the same vision that you have for the project. Driving continuous improvement and competitive edge. A strategic PM embeds best practices, sustainability and innovation. Organizations with strong project management leadership achieve more predictable outcomes and stronger reputations. That has been shown, and research has actually validated that. Shifting gears now to project management as a vehicle for value delivery. And I've already said this, that projects are nothing other than vehicles for value. Projects are nothing other than vehicles for value. Projects are deliberate investments, not just a series of activities. So we want to look at projects from that angle, that every project we're doing, what value is it going to bring to the table? What value is it going to bring to the table? And that, of course, talks to how we can analyze that. So a project is not just a series of activities, it's a deliberate investment to create a lasting economic, social, and strategic value. And economic value, this could be around perhaps revenue generation. So for those of you who work for private entities, that could be a big deal. You want to execute a project that's going to be beneficial to the organization. Cost reduction and efficiency matrices around the organization. Capital asset creation, increased ROI and net margins. Social value for those of you in the NGO space, community infrastructure, job creation and skill transfer, public service improvement. So this will be for those of you who are within the space of government agencies, NGO space. So the point we're trying to say is that value can be looked from different lenses. So I know when you talk about value, we want to appreciate that it just, what comes to our mind is economic value, financial value. That is so okay. But not all projects are to give financial value. Sometimes when you do a road, it's not necessarily for financial value. It could be for economic value. When you light a street or you light up a slum area, you minimize insecurity, you reduce insecurity, you make children in those slum areas have better reading conditions, education levels go up. Well, that is social value, not necessarily financial value. Strategic value, competitive position, going into the new markets, digital transformation, you wanting to improve your business processes. When you talk about value, you want to understand what perspective, what lens of value are you wearing? So and it is important that we appreciate this because the PMP certification, the project management space, is for all industries, both NGOs and for profit, and for governments as well. And all these players in these spaces, in these industries, will be looking at value differently. So when you look at the business case for an NGO project, how they are supporting their value will be very different, will be perhaps more focused on the social value than the economic value. When you look at a for-profit organization, their focus will be on the economic value. Perhaps they might have some CSR component as part of the business case, but that is not the main aspect of the project. So when you talk about value, it is important to appreciate what lens are we looking at? What lens are we looking at? And then that is how we get to appreciate it. Project professionals must deliver more. We must deliver more. Again, that is important. And more is an acronym. I'll mention to you what I mean there. More represents how project professionals can shift from project management success to project success. For the longest, as I mentioned, our focus has been to project management success. But that has been to the detriment of project success. One of the things that we're trying to change, and in the new exam now, in the new PMP curriculum, what is really a major focus is this idea of value. Focusing more on the project success than the project management success. When you talk about the project management success, we tend to focus more on the triple constraints, success of within scope, time, cost, quality. But that is not how we define project success. We can do all that and the project is not successful. So that is really the key. So it's all about value. You look at the different types of value. MORE is an acronym. What does it mean? One, manage perceptions. Project professionals should be able to shape stakeholder understanding and influence how value is perceived through the project life cycle, recognizing the different stakeholders and define success in a different way. So we've already seen how different stakeholders will define value. So we have to recognize that and then be able to manage those perceptions. If we are for profit, if we are in the private sector where our project is we are building a plan to be able to make profit, and then along the way, we perhaps might want to do some CSR for a community where the project is happening. We have to make sure that we are shaping stakeholders so that one stakeholder is not so keen on just pushing this idea of CSR when the main agenda for us is to make profits. So we have to manage perceptions. And remember, we said that we have different stakeholders who you must. So the key actions here is you want to align expectations early. This is so fundamental, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this idea of aligning expectations, and I'll talk shortly about stakeholder expectations. We shall be looking about the PMP. But this idea of aligning expectations early is so key. You see, if you think around projects and project management as having two phases, we can think of projects having an upstream side when we are defining the scope of work, what we are to do, in the planning phase. And then the downstream side where we're doing the execution of the works, monitoring and execution, monitoring and evaluation if we're doing well, and of course, project closure. In the upstream side, this is where we're in the planning stage. This is a very key stage. Unfortunately, many of us don't take so much time there. But what I've discovered is that if we take less time, if we are haphazard, we are careless on the upstream side, the downstream side becomes chaotic. If we don't define our scope well, if we don't identify all your stakeholders, then downstream you have a stakeholder who comes and we need to take into consideration their views, but it becomes too costly. Take, for example, the cost of change. Take the cost of change, for example. If we were to plot the cost of change in any graph, it will be something close to this. So this is time, this is time, this is cost. So the cost of change graph will be something close to this. That in the initial, this is time zero. Of course, as more time lapses, the cost of change becomes. So in the initial phases of the project, the cost of change is so low. The cost of change is so low. In the design stage, in the initial phase of the project, we can bring on board additional scope, the scope, work and all. As you go more into the project, the cost of change becomes so expensive. And we see so many projects today in this dilemma where very significant change are being recommended at the tail end when so much has been done. And most of this could have been done earlier on. So this idea of managing perceptions is also even perception of your clients, the companies work for. This idea that, wait a minute, can we actually align our expectations early? Can we define our scope well from the onset so that as we go into the project, we're able to deliver more value with less of these problems. These are among the reasons why we have significant cost overruns for most projects, because change comes in so late. And that is costly to most projects. Communicate value continuously, not just progress. As we progress, we want to communicate value. We want to move away from reports which are just communicating progress, but value. In cases where we have to deliver value sooner than later, what is the progress? What is the progress? Communicate value continuously. Manage single experience, not just deliverables. Own project success. Remember we talked about more. So now the O. M was manage expectation. O is now own project success. This dimension emphasizes on project professionals should take full accountability of developing both tangible and perceived value, not just completing the tasks or managing scope, budget, and schedule. For the longest, this is what we've done. We've tried to manage scope, budget, and schedule, but we want to own project success. That beyond the project management success, the success of the project. What does this call for? This calls for foreseeing the future, maintainability, I was saying, looking at the life cycle costing of the project, not just looking at the initial upfront cost of the project, but what costs are we going to incur into the future for us to recognize the benefits that we are promising the clients or the organization. So own project success beyond just the triple constant, as it were. Relentlessly reassess project parameters. To navigate today's constant change, project professionals should frequently revisit, adapt project parameters, goals, and success criteria in response to evolving conditions. You want to be agile. As a project professional, you have to be, I don't know if you guys have played squash, but in a squash court, You have to be very agile. You have to see, hey, where is the ball coming to? Because you have to run there. So we're now in a game of squash. You have to be, agility is we have to be on our toes. We expected to make decisions of the goal. Yes, this was our plan. The plan is not working. What is the next best decision that you must make? We must make a decision. It might be a wrong decision, but make a decision. The project has to continue. Much more agility is required of us today as project professionals, and this calls for relentlessly reassessing the project parameters. Do we have a new stakeholder who is becoming difficult? How do we manage them? Do we have a new risk which has developed? How do we handle that? A client has requested a change. This change is very key. We have to incorporate it. But what is the implication? What is the implication in our procurement? So we have to make decisions on the go. We have to be willing to, put aside our original plan, revise a new plan, and move. Projects don't fail suddenly, they drift. And as a project professional, we have to identify those points where projects are likely to drift so that we can bring them back on course. Most projects today operate in a dynamic environment, so we have to adapt as project professionals, or definitely we're going to fail. Continuously reassess the scope, risks, and value. Update designs, plans proactively, not just reactively, and engage stakeholders when assumptions do change. Let people know we want to. So this calls for us being on top of things. Huh? That's basically the thing there we're talking about. Then, of course, the E in the more is expand perspective. Expand perspectives. Every project sits in a larger ecosystem. Projects do not occur in a vacuum. Projects occur in a large ecosystem, social ecosystem, environmental ecosystem, economic ecosystem. We have to expand our perspectives. All projects have impacts beyond the scope of the project itself. We must consider broader picture of how the project fits within the larger business goals or objectives of the enterprise and ultimately into our world. So ESG, as you know, all know right now, this idea of sustainability now is a big deal. We must embrace that within our projects as well, trying to see how can we make our projects more sustainable, because we are at the heart of the execution. And at execution, fortunately, we then have a chance to do some of the things which they might not be foreseen in the initial phases of the project, but as we go, there's a concept we call progressive elaboration in project management, a concept that you might come to learn later on. Very helpful in terms of how we progress into projects. Align projects with national and organizational strategy and balance technical, social, and environmental outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, as project professionals, I want you to embrace more. I want you to embrace more because that is what will make you a more strategic project manager. That is going to make you a more strategic project professional. That is what is required of us as project professionals. Applying more is a path for more value, credibility, and overall success in your project, in your career, and most certainly within the organization. And I'm certain that then our investment in different industries that we represent in this session will add much more value in that case. I want us to shift the gears. We have set the ball rolling. We've understood the concept of value, the concept of more, and being more strategic. I want us to look at the PMP, and I want to talk about the new PMP certification, the PMP credential. Of course, I'm going to be looking at the PMP as revised currently and what basically we started using from this month, and I know from next month, that is basically what should be all through. I want to have a look at the PMP certification. And I'll be looking at this from the perspective of what we already covered, in terms of the value proposition for it, for you as a project professional, and how then you come on board and how it does help you. So we'll be looking at the certification, the eligibility, the domains, exam format, and the PMP dividend. So let's talk about PMP, and perhaps I know most of you could be knowing what PMP stands for, but PMP basically stands for the Project Management Professional. PMP is just an acronym there, an abbreviation of the Project Management Professional. It is the world's most recognized project management certification. It's a gold standard when it comes to project management. It doesn't matter which part of the globe that you are in, whether in Malawi, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, the US, China. Really, the PMP is a gold standard in project management across all industries. PMP is not an industry-specific certification. It doesn't matter whether in construction, finance, IT, NGO space, all these guys, as long as you are in projects, this is your go-to certification. It's a globally recognized certification accepted by employers and governments across 200 plus countries. It's across all industries, IT, construction, healthcare, energy, NGO. The PMP transcends sectors and boundaries. In the recent past, and the said recent past from 2021, PMP changed and incorporated what we call agile project management. So when you come on board now, PMP now makes you, as a PMP, you understand both worlds. How do you deliver projects in a predictive waterfall approach that I mentioned earlier, but also this concept of agile project management, being agile, increasing our agility, being able to be more agile in execution of projects. And of course, the hybrid. Hybrid is where you use both agile as well as predictive aspects. And more projects, actually, research shows that most projects are now hybrid. That means you could find a portion of the project being agile, another portion being predictive. So PMP exam reflects on how actually projects work in both worlds, combining the traditional. I don't like calling it traditional because it sounds archaic, but basically the plan driven, or we call it traditional because this is what has always been there, the waterfall approach. And of course, we're seeing much more employers, many more areas, being making it necessary to have a PMP or a project management professional certification for you to get some particular role. So increasingly required by senior PM roles, tendering requirements. Last week, is it last week? Last week, but one, I think we were running a crash course. A crash course is a 5-day class, Monday to Friday, and some two guys. I knew them on a personal level. The guys who retired a couple of years ago, and they're now in consultancy. And these guys, perhaps in their 60s or something, 65, they are about 6. I think one is 63 and one could be around 64 or something like that. Called me and tell me, you know what, Kevin, I'm not joining this class, which is happening last week but one. And then I asked, hey, why would you want to join a class right now? I mean, this guy has been, he's so much experience in the industry. How do I join? It tells me, after retirement, I went into consultancy. Now there's this project I'm working on for World Bank, and it's become a mandatory requirement that I must have a PMP for me to basically, if I want to get the next kind of this kind of project. So we think this being a much more a requirement in most especially donor funded projects, becoming almost like a must have as it were. And of course, there's a large community, about 1.6 million PMPs globally, which is a good thing, and you're able to appreciate. Now, PMP is offered by PMI. PMP is offered by PMI, and I want us to appreciate a little bit about PMI. Okay. Now, sorry. Sure. Now just 1 minute. There's something I need to do here for me to make this slide deck. I need to use something here. Just 1 minute, guys. And to do something here very briefly, there's some something I need to make sure that we, okay, let me see this place. Okay, good. That will help me. So, sorry guys, I needed to, I think the slide deck was too large, so wasn't showing. So now let's see, this should be able to work now, what I wanted there.
50 years ago, when PMI was founded, project management wasn't a thing yet. But thanks to a fearless group of visionaries and passionate project leaders like you, project management is now a global profession. Every day, everywhere, we transform ideas into reality. But the world of work is changing fast, really fast. So is our profession, and so is PMI. We are expanding our focus, broadening the stories we tell and the roles we play, from start to finish, from inputs to outcomes, from frameworks to whatever works. With your help, we are building a world where people have the skills and capabilities they need to deliver value, no matter what project they're working on. It's a world where organizations deliver value to stakeholders through successful completion of projects, delivery of products, and alignment to value streams. We call this world the project economy. And at PMI, we power the project economy, strengthening society by enabling organizations and empowering people to turn ideas into reality. As we look ahead to our next 50 years, what role will you play?
So the PMP is offered by PMI. PMI is a global body based in the US, but of course PMI has local chapters. So for example, in Kenya, there's a PMI Kenyan chapter, there's a PMI Ugandan chapter, there's a PMI Botswana chapter. Most countries have a local chapter. So I always advise that you get familiar with your chapter and get in touch with them. Sometimes they do help. I want us to focus a little bit on PMP, and this is really what now you'll be covering. This is the new PMP exam content. Sometimes, perhaps most of you could have gotten into the class some time back and you have me talk about the knowledge areas and all. Now, the PMP has been revised, and now you will be looking at the different, what we call exam, 3 domains. The 3 domains that the PMP exam is now divided into is a people domain, the processes domain, and the business environment domain. These domains, we have main tasks. These are the focus areas of each of these domains. For example, the people domain has 8 tasks. The processes domain has 10 tasks, and the business environment domain has 8 tasks as well. In terms of, you see percentages out there, these are percentages of how the exam shall be. So your PMP exam will be divided. So when you go to the exam, 33% of the exam questions will be on the people domain. 41% will be from the processes domain. 26% will be from the business environment domain. Previously, this was 8%. Previously, in the current exam is still ongoing. So this new curriculum, we already using it, but the exam for this new content will be from July 9th. So the exam that is ongoing is it for guys who did the old syllabus. That exam comes to an end on July 8th. So typically what happens is that when people go through the PMP training, average, it's people take between 1 month to 4 months, to 2 months before they can sit for the PMP exam. So this begins in June. This class begins in May. So the entire of May, we have the class. Then June, you have your time to do your personal revision and get ready for the exam. Then July 9th onwards, then you can sit for your exam. So if you're going through these classes, please don't sit for your exam before July 9th, because July 9th is when the content that we're covering will be coming in the exam. But it's going to be very exciting, as you see. Now, let's look at these domains. And this is basically, I want to look at these domains and I want you to understand them with perspective of what we've already covered. The people domain has 8 tasks. The people domain has 8 tasks. And the people domain basically talks about leadership, project team, and stakeholders. Remember, we said that as a project leader, as a project professional, it is important that you are a good leader, that you are a good leader. There's nobody, none of us, who will say that we were very successful in a project and we did it alone. It is impossible. It is impossible. Project success is a team effort, is a team sport. It's not an individual person being successful. As a project leader, you have to be good. So this is what the people domain addresses. It addresses 3 key things. Number 1, leadership. Number 2, project team. Number 3, stakeholders. So leadership, you need to be able to develop a common vision. As a project leader, you need to have the bigger vision. I always say that as a project professional, you are like this person, maybe this analogy I like to use. A gentleman walks into a construction site and meets 3 people. The first person he meets, they ask, hey, what are you doing? And this person says, I'm a bricklayer. I'm laying bricks. So they have a small chat and they proceed. It gets the second person, what are you doing? I'm a bricklayer. I'm building a wall. A different perspective. The other one was laying bricks. This guy is building a wall. Goes to the third person, what are you doing? We're building a cathedral. It's a 4,000 capacity cathedral, XYZ offices here, some driveway. This is going to be the driveway, some children's play area here, and all. Basically explaining the entire project before it begins. That is what a project professional should be. Seeing the end, even at the beginning. So you need to develop a common vision. As a project professional, you're managing a team. And as you manage the team, there will be conflicts. Your ability to manage conflicts. Conflict is not bad in project management. We actually say that sometimes absence of conflict does not mean that everything is okay. There is a paradox. I'll remember it. The name just disappeared. I'm trying to remember that name. Okay, I remember. I'm sure I'll remember. It's coming, but just on the subconscious mind comes and then disappears just before I get it out. So, but what I wanted to say there is that absence of conflict does not necessarily mean that everything is okay. Actually, we always say that sometimes in project conflict is good because it means people have different point of view. So, but of course, we don't want conflict to degenerate so that it gets personalized attacks, and that is what we want to minimize from getting there. So, manage conflicts, lead the project team. You want to lead the project team, and what does leadership entail? You want to be able to motivate the team, understand motivational theories. So we're going to be here, you're going to be looking at to appreciate the motivation theories, Hesberg motivation theory, the Maslow hierarchy of needs, theory X, theory Y, just getting to appreciate that. You need to understand emotional intelligence. How do you what are the 4 facets of emotional intelligence? Empathy, for example, being a good leader. Many of us, as project leaders, we walk around sometimes wanting to catch people doing the wrong thing. But wait a minute, have you ever thought, what would it mean if you sometimes catch people doing the right thing? What does that do to the motivation of the team? So the point here is that we have to be a good leader. You have to be a good leader. This, of course, also entails uh, making sure that we are developing high-performing teams, teams that are autonomous, but also can be able to work, to gel together, so that we are delivering together as a team. And of course, we have Now on the this is that is on project team. This is on the project team. Then of course stakeholders. You need to engage stakeholders. Who are project stakeholders? You need to understand who your stakeholders are, and you need to engage them. It is important to appreciate that stakeholders have different expectations of the project, and this is where we come here. We talk about managing stakeholder expectation. Your stakeholders are going to have different expectations, different interests in the project, and you have to manage them. You have to manage them. How do you manage them? Through proper communication. How you structure your communication to a key stakeholder might be very different from how you manage your communication. With a stakeholder who you just want to inform what is happening in the project. So communication is so fundamental. So when you talk about project communication, it's so key. And this is very important. This is so important that most contracts, and I say that sometimes we execute projects through contracts, because contracts basically outline the project scope and risks which are being allocated. Most contracts will outline how communication should take place. Will it be written? What is it? What is the expectation of the other stakeholder, of the other party from this party? Very important that we understand this. And many projects fail because we do not communicate well. And sometimes we fail to communicate well because we do not understand communication. How do we segment communication? When you're doing a report to the board, for example, your board of directors, perhaps you don't do a very detailed report, but that is not the case when you're doing a report to the team that needs to understand everything, a step-by-step report. So your ability here is very key, and we shall focus a little bit more on communication because communication is so key when it comes to projects and project success. Of course, how you communicate your team, active listening, for example, the ability to listen to people, and how to use emotional intelligence, listening to people. Sometimes, as somebody walks late into a meeting, and you're the person perhaps who convene the meeting, you're chairing the meeting, you're the person chairing the meeting, and the person walks in late. Our natural tendency is to first be furious and you've always come late. But wait a minute, empathy asks, wait a minute, perhaps they had a sick child. Perhaps on their way here they got involved in a car accident. We do not know. So can we empathize? Okay, is everything fine? Then now we can then take the correction level. So the point here, what I'm trying to stress so much really is that when it comes to people domain, this is a very key domain that we must understand for us to be good project professionals. Because projects are done for people by people. And our ability to understand this domain is going to be a very big success factor for your projects. Doesn't matter that the rest are not important, but the people domain is so key. It's okay because this is where stakeholders come in. This is the people who are potentially likely to. You need to understand your stakeholder. Are they a resistant stakeholder? Are they a supportive stakeholder? How do I make sure that we are on the same page? Managing expectations, for example, calls for proper understanding of how we define our scope, because then we will be able to tell from our scope definition, the upstream, downstream. Remember the upstream, downstream theory I was trying to say, understanding your scope well and telling people that, wait a minute, we understand what you expect. However, this is not the scope of the project. Perhaps in phase 2 of the project, this shall come into place. We hear you. Let people be heard. Sometimes even when we do not want to take into consideration what they have to say. So just a little bit of emphasis there because I feel it's important that we appreciate all these concepts as project professionals. Align expectations to the project, and of course ensure that we transfer knowledge. Projects are a source of significant knowledge, A number of us will be, perhaps we close projects without having a point to, pausing to look at the lessons learned. What did we learn from this project? Where can we improve? What can we improve? What can we learn? What can we improve? That is what we are talking about there. So that is a people domain. 33% of your exam shall be covering the people domain, and you really want to understand this. In my opinion, this is a key area for most of us. And most people find previously, most people have found more value in this domain because this is where some of us go wrong. This is where we fail in our projects. This is where the PMP wants us uh, to basically advance in and become better. Then we have the processes domain. The processes domain. And the processes domain is basically what we're saying is this covers the technical aspect of managing the project. As a project professional, we cannot run away. So, and this is where most of us focus on. When talk about project management, most of us are focused on this area, the processes domain. And it's very key. We have 10 tasks here, and this is about developing, number one, before I go to the tasks, this is about the technical aspect of managing the project. So this is about your scope, your budget, your schedule, your procurement, your resources, etc. But let's look at the resources. Let's look at the process and understand. Number one is developing an integrated project management plan and plan delivery. Remember the analogy I gave you for the project manager, for the person who is building a cathedral. 3 people doing the same thing, laying bricks, but one person has a different perspective of the project. That is you as a project professional. Seeing the cathedral even as we lay the bricks. Seeing the cathedral even as we lay the bricks. Seeing the entire end product even as we are on the foundation stage. What does that call for? Developing an integrated project plan. This gives us the entire project. This gives us how we're going to handle different aspects of the project, how we were going to handle our schedule, how we're going to handle our resources, how we're going to handle our procurement, how we're going to handle our scope, how we're going to handle changes within the project. An integrated project management plan basically looks at the entire project, and then we're able to say, hey, wait a minute, if we have risks, this is how we should handle the risks. Develop and manage the project scope. I love scope because scope is the very essence of the project. The reason why we are executing a project is for us to be able to deliver the scope of work. And this is where 90% of the projects that go have issues with cost overruns, time overruns, so many changes, risks which were unplanned. This is where they go wrong. Project scope. The scope was not clearly articulated from the onset. I see so many projects, and indeed I have been part of projects where the client, the owner wants you to fast track. There's this urgency to start the project even before we know what we want to do. I tend sometimes to engage with clients, and a key question I always get people asking me, even on the onset of the project, is, hey, how much is this project going to cost? How long is it going to take? And I'm like, can we first define what we want? Because for me to tell you how much or how long, I need to understand the scope of work. I see so many procurement, public procurements going to tender where the scope is so ill-defined. What does that cause? A lot of claims, a lot of change orders, a lot of variations later on. We want to understand the scope and understand it very well. Take time on your scope. Take time on your scope. Identify your requirements. Segment those requirements. Let's have people really appreciating this idea of scope. So as we will be talking here, I'll want you to appreciate when we'll be looking at this, we shall talk about the product scope and the project scope. Those are different aspects of scope, by the way. So you need to be able to understand what is the project scope, what is the product scope. Project scope is the product scope is refers to the functionalities, the features, characteristics of the product, the end product that you're going to deliver. So this basically is if you're going to buy a phone, you're looking at features. You want how many megapixels do you want for your camera? What is the RAM that you're looking at? What is the storage capacity you're looking at? Those are the features, functionalities that you want for you. That talks to the product scope. And it is important that you understand the product scope. But when we're executing projects, and as a good project professional, you have to be able to understand the product scope, then you understand the project scope. Project scope is what you have to do for you to deliver the product scope. Talk to the safety aspect of the project. Talk to the stakeholder requirements as you execute the project. etc. So as we deliver this, as we deliberate on scope, I really want you guys to appreciate this because this makes or breaks projects. This makes or breaks projects. I mean, if we get the scope wrong, then a number of the things we're going to do are going to be wrong, guys. So appreciate that. Then help ensure value-based delivery. We've already talked about this concept of value, but we want to make sure that especially in defining our scope of work, we're trying to align it to the strategy of the organization. So then we can help the organization in delivering value. Plan and manage resources. In project management, when we talk about resources, we're talking about, of both human resources and physical resources. So these are your people and other assets, tools that you're using, materials, etc. So you want to plan and manage resources. Now, if our scope is ill-defined, then definitely this becomes a problem. This becomes a problem. So the scope is so key. So when you talk about resources, perhaps something that we needs to be aware of is that sometimes some of you are going to be having all the resources you require internally, but about 90 to 95% of us, it is going to be impossible. When you're doing projects, rarely do you have all the resources available internally. Sometimes you have to get on board other resources externally. You might need consultants on board. You might require materials on board. You might require equipment, excavators, and the likes on board. So when you are thinking of acquiring resources from outside the organization, then we have to think about what? We have to think about procurement. That's why you see resources and procurement follow each other. They're going to follow each other because we engage procurement process because we need to acquire resources to execute a project, right? So project procurement is key. And the essence of this course is not to make you a procurement expert, but ideally what we're saying is that we know that you are going to require resources. You're going to require resources, and you might not have resources internally. So you as a project manager, as a project professional, it is your responsibility to know what do I require when, then I can initiate the procurement process. Even when you have a procurement entity, department or section within the organization, you need to inquire. And many times they will actually get to you because remember you're the vision bearer of your project, right? From leadership. So you have to give that guidance as well. Plan and manage finances. This is about budget. So you need to understand now this is a big deal here. You need to understand how do we come up with your budget? How do you embed risk into your budget? We talk about contingencies, reserves, contingency reserve, management reserve. Basically, how do we come up with our project budget and how do we manage it? How do we control the budget? So we talk about some indices. For example, we talk about the cost performance index, which is an efficiency matrix for us to be able to check how are we progressing. For every dollar we're investing in the project, what is our output? Are we potentially going to be making a loss or a cost? Are we potentially likely to having a cost overrun? So key things there. We talk about variances, cost variance, schedule variance, and the like. So when we talk about finances, it's got to be an interesting area. There's a concept we shall be looking at here called earned value management, which is a very powerful concept as a way of monitoring and controlling, and the monitoring and evaluation of a project. Plan and optimize quality. Quality is key. Again, things that you must appreciate. Perhaps most important here for me is for you to understand, generally what quality is, the different costs of quality. You need, because quality is not cheap. Quality is not free. Quality comes at a cost. So we talk about cost of conformance and the cost of non-conformance. It's important that you understand that. Also, you have to talk about the quality control tools. There's something called the 7 quality control tools, the Pareto charts, the Ishikawa fishbone diagram, the histograms, and the like. So just getting to appreciate what they are and how we can use them, for us to control, to measure, and check quality. Plan and manage your schedules. This is about your programs. Here, the real idea here is to understand how we come up with estimation of our time schedule for our projects, analogous estimation techniques, parametric estimation technique, the bottom-up estimation technique, the 3-point estimation technique, all which we use basically to estimate how long our project is going to take. Now, schedule is very important in projects because some of you will be managing projects which there is a penalty for lateness. So we call it sometimes liquidated damages in projects, or delay damages in contracts. So if you have that, you really want to make sure that you understand this. Now, for those of you who manage contracts as well, a key thing that perhaps you might have encountered in your contracts is what we call an extension of time, EOT. You cannot do an EOT, or what we call a delay analysis, if you do not understand your program or your schedule well, your critical path. So we shall be talking about critical path, what it is, to talk about flaws and basically how we use them for making decisions. So a key emphasis of this course, especially in the processes domain, is on decision making, because these are the technical aspects of the project. So it's not so much about you knowing them, but more also on how do you make decisions. How do you make decisions with the knowledge you have? And remember, by the way, your PMP exam is a scenario-based exam. So the PMP exam is not a cramming exam. You don't cram your way through. It's an application exam. So we'll try to focus much more on decision making. When you talk about the processes domain, you being able to make decisions, then make the project a success at the end of the day. Evaluate the project status and manage project closure. Very key. How do we close a project? Some of us, close projects very kienyeji, very, haphazardly, nothing to take. But project closure is a big deal. Project closure is a big deal. We have both financial closure and technical closure. So you have to make sure that both of them are done properly. You have to make sure that we have closed your project, you have closed your procurement, you have if there is any operations and maintenance manuals, as built drawings, anything that needs to be known for the future of the operations of the asset, we have to make sure that it's all up to date. That is very key. 41%, very high, but an area that most of you are perhaps likely to be very familiar with when we shall be talking about it, but an area nevertheless very key in the project management process. If you want to understand this, it's going to be a very fundamental area, and I'm sure a number of you will be appreciating this. Then finally, is the business environment domain. This is going to be perhaps a little bit new to some of you in terms of project application. And this is really connecting projects to the organizational strategy. This is defining and establishing the project governance. So here in business environment, this basically is going to be an area where we're looking at the project in the realm or within the confines of the strategic organization, of the strategic vision, mission, and the strategy of the organization. So here about establishing project governance, plan and manage project compliance. Now, compliance is a major thing, but our project can be very successful. But if there's non-compliance, if there's any non-compliance can be very expensive in projects, and compliance can be very expensive in projects, permits, licenses, internal procedures of the organization. So all these things we have to comply with. Feel at which actually, when we talk about risks, when we talk about plan and manage risk, one of the things we say, one of the biggest risks you always I want you to be looking at when you're looking at your risk register is the risk of non-compliance. Because it's very key. Then manage and control changes. Changes like they do occur in projects. However, we hope if we do a very good job on the upstream in defining the scope of work, then you do find that when it comes to this aspect of changes, sorry, when it comes to this other side of, I want to change the pen so that we don't. When it comes to changes, if we did our scope, we might have minimal changes. Again, remember the curve there that I showed you. The cost of change increases exponentially as we go deeper into the project. When we are close to the completion of the project, and then a customer comes and says, change this. You're like, oh my goodness, do we have to change this? We shall talk about Agile and how Agile deals with projects, of course, in the Agile Manifesto. Remove impediments and manage issues because they develop. Plan and manage risks. This is a big one, ladies and gentlemen. Your risks are there in your projects. Risks are occasioned by uncertainty. And you want to understand how you deal with risks in projects. And if you want to transfer risks through your contract, I want you to appreciate the impact of that. So this is going to be a very important topic as well. You want to pay very close attention there. We talk about positive and negative risks and how we navigate through risks. Continuous improvements, it's something that naturally we want to be able to do so that we are continually checking, being more proactive, seeing where can we improve. I always say better never stops. Better never stops. So we always seeing how can we get better? How can we get better? Better never stops. Support organizational change, and then of course evaluate external business environment changes. Now, I always say to people that projects do not occur in a vacuum. Projects do not occur in a vacuum. Projects occur within an ecosystem that is larger than the project itself. Projects occur within, your project is here. There's a business environment where this is your organization, but even your organization is not alone. There's the environment, the external environment affecting it. So your project is just a dot in a large ecosystem. And we must appreciate projects from that lens. So it is important that you understand that we have to appreciate what are the environmental factors. We call them enterprise environmental factors, EEFs, enterprise environmental factors that affect our project, both internal and external. Internal enterprise environmental factors, there are things like culture. The culture of organization existed before the project came on board. So it might be a good culture that supports the project. It might be a bad culture that actually does not support the project. So how do you navigate that environment? It could be external enterprise environmental factors beyond you. Petrol prices go up because of the Iran war, and your project has to change. You find that your costs go higher. Things that you are not planned, interest rates, government policy, change of laws, All those things can potentially affect your project, those enterprise environmental factors. Most importantly, here, what you want to understand is these factors affect the project. The question is, as a project professional, how do you make decisions around that space? How do you make decisions around that space? That's what we want to be. So one of the key things that really we want to focus on this course is on decision making, because those are the spaces where you find yourself doing projects. But how do you make decisions with all this? Ladies and gentlemen, that is what the course entails. I find it much more practical, much more real. It's really what the future or the current project manager, project professional needs to know. And by all means, I think a very valuable addition. And this course is based on the examination content outline, the ECO. So your PMP exam is based on the examination content outline, not the pen book guide, not many other books, the examination content outline. So if you want to know what you need to know for your PMP, you go to the PMP examination content outline. You will be provided with this document. This document is available online to download for free, and you need to appreciate this. All these tasks that I've said, you will find them in the ECO, the people domain, the process domain, the business. Then you have the tasks, the enablers, which we shall discuss in the class. A good reference of this will be, you will make good reference to the PEMP guide, the 8th edition, but this is not the only resource, but a key reference. And you will also have access to this, but also when you're a PMI member, you have access to this PEMP guide now on the 8th edition. Much more practical, much more real. I think I like the structure of it. You will get access to this, a key resource that you have for your PMP classes, and good that you appreciate. We, of course, run the PMP masterclasses and I'll shortly be showing what's coming up. But I always tell people that really our promise is this is the most comprehensive PMP training course in the market. And not just saying, but because the people who have been through these classes have rated it. If you check, I think on our Google reviews, we have a 5-star rating, because we believe in that project management is key in organizations, but not just any project. You want to be able to make decisions. You want to be able to appreciate this course from the lens of practical project management, not just for the case of passing the exam. Yes, you got to pass the exam. That we're given. I mean, but anybody can train you to pass the exam. We also want you to be able to appreciate the practicality of the course, the practicality of what you're going through in terms of the training. So the PMP exam has, this is the format of the PMP exam. You're going to be sitting for 180 questions. You have 230 minutes to do this. I don't want to belabor so much, because on that D-Day, on the last day of the exam, we take some time to go through this. You have two option 10 minutes break. So how the exam is divided is you will do the first 60 questions, then you have a 10 minutes break, then you have another set of 60 questions, then a 10 minutes break, then another set of 60 questions. So 60, 60, 60 with 2 minutes, 10 minutes breaks in between there. I advise candidates to take the breaks. They help you rejuvenate. They help you to just have some time off the screen, because this is an online exam and the questions will be multiple choice and all, and you want to just appreciate this. The examination content outline, by the way, has all these things, what I'm showing you here. The eligibility criteria, you need a 4-year degree, so you need to have your degree. You need to have 36 months of project management experience. Now, you don't necessarily, no, PMI doesn't say that you need to be, like the PM and all, but if you've been engaged in projects, and most of us have really been engaged in projects, you've been engaged in projects, I mean, it's, by the way, when people ask, is there a way, how do they show this? They just trust you. So it's you doing what? enumerating your experience, saying, between this and this time, I did this project and this is what I did. And also, it's really based on you. And the point is not for PMI. This condition is not put there to harass you. This condition is put there because the PMP exam is a scenario-based exam. They assume that you have experience in project management. So the questions are phrased in such a way that you actually have some experience in project management. So it's not like PMI wants to punish you for not having experience, not at all. And that is why I tell people this is not like a condition that PMI, you must have had high leadership. No, that is not the case. The case here, why the experience is there, is so that they don't surprise you, because this is not an exam that you will cram your way out. When you go to the exam, PMI assumes that you have been a project manager and you told us you have been one. So we're giving you questions to test. Now, as a project manager, knowing the knowledge you have about PMP, can you apply it in these scenarios? So we give you scenarios in which you have to answer. Then, of course, 35 hours of project management education. And this project management education has to go through what we call an authorized training partner. Now, Peakpoint Consulting Group, this class, is an authorized training partner. So when you join the class, one of the things that we give you is what we call a student kit from PMI. And when we finish the class, there are some questions. You do an assessment, and you need to pass that assessment for you to show that you actually have attended this training. So previously, you could do training from anywhere, and PMI will accept it. But in the recent past, what is been shown, and I think I concur with them on that one, is that people, and nothing against those of you who have a master's in project management, but with a master's in project management, people could do the PMP. However, so many people will say that they have done a PMP, a project management training, but they end up failing the exam because it's a professional exam. And then they will come back and all. So PMI now wants to make sure that you actually verify this. So again, we shall discuss a little bit about that on this education aspect. Then, of course, another second part, if you don't have a degree, so this will be those of you who would be having a diploma, then instead of the only different, what changes now, instead of 36 months, you need to demonstrate 60 months of experience, or so to say you need 5 years of experience. So the rest of the things are about the same. So just about eligibility. I have a short clip here. Let me see if it plays. If it doesn't, we'll just keep it. Just a minute. Oh, I think it's how I am presenting this. Okay.
In the realm of business, where success is earned and leadership is defined, there's a path that stands above the rest. Welcome to the Project Management Professional Masterclass PMP by Peak Point Consulting Group, a journey that unlocks your potential and sets you on the trajectory of excellence. Join the ranks of over 1.4 million esteemed credential holders, worldwide individuals who have proven themselves. Statistics don't lie. These aren't just numbers. They are your passport to professional success. At Peak Point Consulting Group, we don't just train, we mentor. We don't just educate, we empower. With our PMI authorized training partner status, we bring you unmatched expertise, unparalleled insights. With the Project Management Professional Masterclass, you don't just learn, you transform. You don't just manage, you lead. The PMP isn't just a certification. It's a symbol of excellence, a testament to your dedication to delivering results. Prove yourself with the PMP. Elevate your potential, your career, and your future. Peak Point Consulting Group, empowering leaders, transforming futures.
So I think I've alluded to most of what is here. The PMP dividend, of course, a high salary. You project managers with PMP certification or any other project management certification. Recent research shows that about 71% chances of project success in terms of meeting the original goals. And of course, the PMP is the most recognized project management credential in the world. So it's a gold standard when it comes to project management. Who can benefit from the PMP? Experienced project professionals, individuals leading projects in any industry and want to validate the expertise, boost their career growth, or open doors to higher paying roles. Consultants and contractors, if this is your space, you also benefit from it. Teams with project functions. So I've seen guys from HR, finance, because they are engaged in projects on a day-to-day basis. In marketing, HR, operations, teams evolving from informal to structured project delivery. The PMP professionalizes workflow and establishes scalable practices. One of the things about PMP, of course, the skill set, they're scalable, across any project that you do. And of course, project-driven organizations. Some of you, as you're doing introduction to telecom, engineering, architecture, quantity surveyors, NGO space, where project management is more what you do on a day-to-day basis. This is an area that you want to focus on. So you can always, I always say that all industries, all professionals, even on your own personal projects, you benefit a great deal with a PMP. So what is your investment? Your investment for this is this was for the previous classes. So this class, for the training fee, you have 47,000 as your training fee. We're charging at 50,000. We say, you know what, the new course, because there's a significant aspect, especially on the resources that PMI requires you to have. Previously, some of you could be aware that this was charged at $300, $350, and 40,000 Kenya shillings. Significant. The actual market price will be doing this as 50,000, but for you guys, we'll be doing it at 47,000 and $400, as the case might be. The PMP exam. So this is the training fee. So this is basically your investment. The exam fee, if you're a PMI member, it's $284. If you're not a member of PMI, you pay $575, which is a lot of money. I don't think you need to, but you can pay for your PMI membership. This is optional, but I highly encourage you to pay for membership, especially the first time when you're doing your exam. So $124. So $129. This makes the total at 400 and this is $413. So you see already significantly lower than $575. But another very important thing is that when you become a PMI member, there are other advantages of becoming a PMI member, especially when you're initially doing the exam. You get access to what we call PMI Infinity. This is an AI tool from PMI. It's been trained on PMI resources, the Pembo Guide 8th edition, the study hall and all. So if you want to have, for example, sample questions and all, PMI Infinity generates tons and tons of questions, real world, PMP exam like questions. So I highly encourage that you become PMI members, especially initially. You can opt out of membership after that does not in any way affect your certification. But when you're initially doing your certification, you please pay for PMI membership. It really does help you. What is included in the training fee? You have live instructor-led classes, which can culminate in the 35 contractor certificate that you get. Real world project scenarios and case studies, over 1,000 plus PMP exam simulator questions, 2 full mock exams with a debrief, basically what you would, where you could have worked on or how you would have done better. The PMP exam application assistance, so we'll assist you through the entire process of applying for your PMP exam. This is due on the last day of the exam, of the training. And of course, you have access to the premium Peak Point revision group. This is a revision group that you are in there. It has a number of people. You find so many other people who are at different levels of preparation of the exam. So what we do in the revision group is we have a number of questions. Every day we have 10 questions. Then in the evening, you have the answers to the questions, why that is the correct answer, why they last, what to, and these people who have passed the exams have given so much credit to the revision group. It also keeps you on check because sometimes life happens, and unless you have somebody on board to check you, to basically be nudging you into this, you can always take so long before you do the exam. And of course, you are almost certain that you're going to pass your exam because our success rate and pass rates for the exam has been so high. And if you're in any doubt, check the reviews on Google, and you'll just be happy. So, again, I've said, why should you trust us? We have high success rates, and of course, as of yesterday, at 413 reviews, we have a 5-star rating on Google reviews. I think that is just it's just a good thing. So you can join any of the classes that are coming up. We have 4 classes. We have typically evening classes and late evening classes and Saturday classes. So the evening classes are from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. East African time. This is for those of you in the Central African time, Rwanda, Zambia, Namibia, South Africa. This will be 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central Africa time. I didn't see anybody from West Africa, so that's what I'm saying. Then the late evening class starts from this is 8. This is from 8 p.m., not 8:30. From 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. This is from 8 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. It's 10:30 p.m. So it's usually 2.5 hours. Huh? This is for 5 weeks. This is for 4 weeks. Then the next class is between 11th May to 4th June. This is May. Sorry, this is May. This is the next May. It's a May class, the evening class. It begins next week, 5th May to 9th May. Then the Saturday class. This is typically 8 Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. It starts on 8th June to 25th June. So basically, these are the upcoming classes, but definitely we have a range of classes all the way up to October. There's a link that I think, Brenda, you can share on the chat. If you click on that link, you can see all the classes which are available. There's a part where you will be asked which class are you interested in. Then a number of classes are going to show up. Just select the class that best suits you, the best time for you. The late evening classes are very new class that we introduced, but interestingly, it has had most people having a tendency to prefer it, but the late evening class as well, the evening class. So these are the classes which are coming. In case you feel you want to move into any of those classes, by all means, use the link to do it.
I thought I knew how to do every project, manage every project, but when I became a PMP certified, it brought structure and results, and brought a shape and form into how I manage and deliver projects. Currently, I'm an Operational Excellence Coordinator at Texas Department of Transportation. Becoming a certified project manager is like one of those serendipities. I was a little stubborn. I did not see the importance of being certified since I was doing the job already. If I had known what I know now, I could have been certified 20 years ago. And I was able to learn quick. I was able to lead other certified PMPs to mentor hundreds of others. If you work in an environment that is innovation-driven, you're going to need PMP skills to be able to walk toe-to-toe with those other people who are in the innovation space. PMP gives you a competitive advantage in the crowded job market. My name is Benjamin Anyacho, and I am a PMP. I thought I knew.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. See you in the PMP masterclasses that are coming up, and that is a presentation for the evening. And in case you want to contact us, these are our contacts there. You can always reach us on email, info@peakpoint Consulting Group. You can check our website, www.ppcg.co.ke. in case you want to chat up, call. These are the phone numbers. You can call us. You can do WhatsApp. WhatsApp is usually very fast with our team. So those are the contacts there if you want to check them out. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Kevin Yakundi, Kevin Yakundi. You'll find me there. I always like to connect and just to network with everybody I get to meet. I want to stop the share, and I hope it was a fruitful, and you guys are able to benefit with the one or two things. But I'll check a couple of questions which have been answered, but perhaps should not been asked. Huh. Oh, what's the difference between the evening and late evening class? The evening class, it's a 3 hour class. The late evening class is 2.5 hours. So definitely the late evening class goes a little bit longer because we're doing less hours. We don't want to go to 11 p.m. People might be so sleepy. Of course, I know that will be 9:30 for our friends in the Central African region. That now perhaps might be interesting, but because we have a number of Kenyans as well who are in that class, so they don't want to take it so long into the night. So basically, that explains the difference in terms of time. Please, West African time. Um, Perhaps what might work for you, Chidi, will be the late evening class, because the late evening class is, and if you give me time, I'll check. That should be 7, that should be 6 p.m. So the 8 p.m., when it's 8 p.m. Here, that should be your 6 p.m., I think. But I can check that. And actually, when you click on the registration link that is shared on the link, you should be able to see in West African time that will be 6 p.m. Sorry, wait a minute. The late evening class, that is 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. West African time. So I think that should be, and actually the class, the late evening class was born because of the West African market, because we had people who couldn't join the evening class because it was too early for them. They were still at work. But discovered that most Kenyans also love the late evening class for whichever reason. So yeah. What if they obtain this? If you don't obtain this, and acquire, well, a certificate. Now, the PMP, the PMP, the PMI requirements I mean, on their website is the diploma and degree. So I don't think they have any other. Um, I can engage before. We haven't had such a question, so I can engage. I've not encountered such before, so I can engage. But on their website, the eligibility and all those things that are showing you, they're basically on the PMI website, and that is what they give. So there's nothing much on the other side. I think we can check that later. Okay, so what has been dropped in the current curriculum and what is new in the current curriculum? So what has now in the current curriculum, what has been, you saw the domains, how they have the business environment now is a larger. There's much more emphasis on this idea of value. There is much more emphasis on project success as opposed to project management success. So that is the business environment you see. There's a lot of emphasis on business environment. We now have 8% as opposed, sorry, we now have what that 26% as opposed to 8% that previously was the case. We also have, especially in the business environment domain, and we will look at that as well. There's also consensus on the idea sustainability and artificial intelligence in that as well. Of course, I was highlighting. So there is more inclusions. There's more inclusions as opposed to what was previously in the business environment domain. Another thing that has come up very strongly in the current curriculum is, and perhaps those of you who have done the previous studies, is of course now a much this idea of emphasis that most projects are now hybrid by nature. So this concept of agile project management, now we have to understand it. And as we go through the entire course content, this idea of agility coming on board on how you should make decisions at the level of agility. Agile project management is coming very strong and a significant portion of the exam. The idea of compliance is now in the course content. Compliance is now a major area of focus, and project governance is also a major area of focus. As I saw through as I was looking at the content as well. So significant. Definitely, those who already have the previous content, there is very minimal that has changed. There's a couple of realignment, but the core content remains the same. The approach is what has changed. The approach is what has changed. Again, remember I mentioned there's now this idea, bigger focus on project success as opposed to project management success. We've been focusing so much on project management success, looking at the triple concept and all, but now there's this idea of how do we that more framework. You remember the more framework I gave? That is what we will be looking at a little bit more. In addition to assisting students throughout the entire till they pass exam, do you also help them get placements for being certified PMI? No, that we you can imagine the number of people we train, and we train so many other people. The only thing that we do sometimes is we have people who, organizations can come to us and say, hey, we have this PM role. Do you have somebody you can recommend? This is what we have is what we can push to our people. Those of you who are in our groups, you perhaps have seen that before, but because of the nature of people that we train as well, we do not assist on that unless we have an inquiry from a client at all. We get a number of inquiries, not just on PMP, on other certifications as well. We, for example, get some inquiries on FIDIC. Do you have, could we help us get somebody who's very good in FIDIC and all? So basically, we push what we have from the inquiries we have, but it's not in our core mandate. Basically, that is Sylvia, I think, who was asking that. The classes are all online classes. They're virtual classes. We do have a few physical classes, but that is on a need basis. That's basically largely corporate clients who want to have us train their team on site or in a location. Then we can always do physical classes. Otherwise, the sessions that we talked about, the online, they are the way we have been having this class. This is how the class shall be. The only difference is that in the classes, we are in a webinar setting, in a meeting setting, not in a webinar setting. You note that in a webinar setting, you even do not know who is in the class with you. In the meeting setting, you're able to see all the participants. You can interact. You can unmute anytime. You can ask questions. It's much more interactive than a webinar setting. Definitely, I mentioned why we have a webinar setting in these free classes is because usually of the large numbers of people who show up in the classes. So sometimes it becomes difficult to manage the mics, especially somebody unmutes incidentally and there's a lot of background noise. So the webinar setting helps to control that because you cannot unmute yourself. But during the class, the numbers are smaller, much more manageable. So we're always in our webinars in a meeting setting, and you can always unmute yourself, make it more interactive, and share with us, basically your experiences. What makes our classes interesting as well, I will tell people, is the fact that is the participants. You see, we come on board 5 years experience, 10 years experience, 20 years experience in project management, combined experience of more than 150 years in those classes. So if you are there, we always want just to hear from you, listen from you as well, so that it's not a monologue, because sometimes it can be very boring if I'm just doing the talking and nobody is responding or nobody is giving their views and all. So I think I can't see any more questions. You will get the recording. You can join the WhatsApp group I mentioned earlier. There's a link there which has been shared for that link. If you click on it, you get to have access to all the classes which are coming up. You can register for any class. We believe that I personally believe that project management is one of those qualifications which serve across all industries, again, as I've demonstrated, and a PMP is a good addition. And I'm sure a couple of you sometimes have postponed this for too long. So you know what I've been waiting for. So this is the time. We're here to guide you. We shall guide you until you become a PMP. We always tell people that when you join us, us is not that you've joined us, then we want to leave you hanging. No, we want to make sure that we guide you through the entire process until you become a PMP. So for us, that's a big deal. That when you join us, until the day you become a PMP, and perhaps those of you who are on our LinkedIn, follow PickPoint on LinkedIn, by the way, and you get to appreciate all this. You see, the number of people who are passing on a daily basis, and we pass and we celebrate with you, just like you're also happy on your own. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It was a great honor, great pleasure to be with you this evening, setting aside the 2 hours of your life to be with us this particular evening. It's my hope that it's been a great session. You've benefited from this session. Looking forward to seeing a number of you in our PMP master classes. The evening class begins next week. The late evening class begins the week after next week. Whichever class that you want to join, we really welcome you, and we're sure that you get value for your time and value for your money. And in case you don't intend to join us this year or any other time, I hope you got something valuable that you can hopefully apply along the way. Remember, projects are vehicles of value, and in anything you do, you want to ask yourself, what value will this project give? And what lens are you looking your value from? Is it from the economic lens? That's the economic value. Is it from the social value lens? Is it from the business, strategic value? That is what we call it. So thank you so much. Have a good night. Have a good day tomorrow. And looking forward to engaging with those of us who will be in the class from next week. And there's a LinkedIn, our LinkedIn page is there. I highly recommend that you do follow that link, and we shall be with you. We shall be engaging with you. Also, you can check out. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well. I always like to engage with you. So thank you so much, and have a good one. Bye.